Hello and welcome once again to the Nature Series. This week we're going to talk primarily about birds of prey. Some of you may recall, I guess it was about the second show that we did was on birds of prey primarily. We had some birds here in the studio. Well, we're not that fortunate this time, but nevertheless there's some other things I want to talk about and bring to light. Birds of prey take in several types of birds. They take in hawks, owls, eagles, falcons primarily. And the ones we're going to talk about more in detail on this week's show is going to be hawks and owls, and primarily hawks. In the hawk family, you have three types of hawks. Well, actually two types of hawks plus falcons. You have Buteos and you have accipiters. And there's a major difference within the two types or the two families of hawks, and you can notice those when they're flying. And we're going to get into all this a little bit later. But one of the reasons I wanted to do the show, I wanted to try to get this to you earlier, and unfortunately with the time schedule of everything, we just weren't able to do it. But the hawk migration, the fall migration, is not just about over now. For all intents and purposes, it's really over. And what this is the hawks are migrating from the northern areas on down to the south or southwest areas. And what they'll do is they'll winter down there, and then in the spring there'll be a spring migration where they'll all come back up again. And that's kind of neat to see as well, but it's not really as intense as the fall migration. That's the greatest one to see. So we're going to talk about this now. Again, it's a little late, but keep it in mind for next fall. I know it's a long time away, but keep it in mind. And if you're interested in it at all, which I'm sure you are since you tuned in this week, get yourself a bird book and just get used to identifying the hawks as to what they are, the types of hawks, so that when you see them, you'll know what they are, and it really is a lot of fun. I know it sounds kind of boring sometimes, and there's the old cliche about all the bird watchers and stuff, but believe me, if you really get into it a little bit, you'll just find that it's a lot of fun. The other thing that I want to mention too is, and again for practice sake, I say get your bird book out. You may be thinking too, well, golly, they've all migrated down towards the south, and how am I going to do anything now? I just can't read a book. There's still hawks around. I mean, when we say they migrate out, it doesn't mean that they all go. A lot of them do, but you still have your resident hawks, and you'll see those flying around. Now, the primary or the main hawk, the most common hawk that we'll see around here, and we're going to start with this one, is the red-tailed hawk. All hawks, by the way, are still considered endangered. The red-tailed hawk has come back in population dramatically. I mean, the increase has been incredible, and there is an abundance of them now. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that we can go out and it's okay for somebody to shoot them, or it's okay to take away their habitat to take down their ranks, because even though there's a lot, we need them, and they serve a very important purpose. All birds of prey do. Again, we're going to get into that later. But anyhow, okay, red-tailed hawks, the most common that you'll see around here when you're driving down the road, down the interstate, or you're driving, even on the back roads. A lot of times you'll see them sitting perched on light, street light posts, and you'll see them all over in the trees. And the first sign of the red-tailed hawk, if it's in the tree or when it's in its perch stage, is you notice the big white breast. They're enormous. These birds are huge. I mean, from foot to neck is probably, on an average, is about like this, and probably about this wide. Now, the breast size, as far as width of the breast, will be larger or smaller depending on whether the bird has just eaten recently or not. As they eat, the breast area, what we call the crop area, where the food goes in and is stored, swells and gets bigger as they eat. At any rate, the first thing you'll generally see is you'll see the white. I mean, it's so prominent that you'll be driving down and you just see it sticking out there. And as you go driving along, if you stop the car by them, chances are they'll fly away, but just slow down, or when you drive by, just take a look at it, and you'll see it sitting there, and then you'll notice that it's just looking around, and it almost looks as though it's watching traffic go by. And, for a while, I even wondered. In fact, I had to talk to some experts that I know and said, what are they doing? Are they really sitting there watching traffic go by, and what are they thinking? And actually, no, they're not. What they're doing is generally on the roadsides where the grass is cut lower and it's little gullies and stuff, they'll find their food there, their primary food, which is like mice and moles and things like that. And that's all they're doing. They're just sitting up there, just looking around, and you think, well, golly, they're up pretty high, and a mouse is only so big. Hawks and all birds of prey have an incredible eyesight. I mean, it's amazing. In fact, as you ride by in the car, they will even detect your eyes making contact with them. They are very keen of eyes, whether it's animals or humans. It doesn't matter. They're very keen on eyes. And this is with all animals, by the way, so just keep that in mind as well. But anyhow, when you go, and you're looking on the roadside, watch for them flying as well. Red-tailed hawks are just wonderful flyers. I mean, out of the hawk family, I think they're the most graceful. When you see a red-tailed flying, and another thing too is the red-tailed hawk is in the Buteos family. What you'll notice is you'll notice wide or broad wings, and you'll notice a wide wedge tail as you see it up in the sky. And another way to tell a red-tailed from the other ones is the way it flies. A red-tailed hawk will soar, and it will soar almost endlessly, and then maybe it'll flap once, or it may fly a little bit and then just soar and soar and soar, whereas the other ones are a little bit different. The red-tail is the most common soarer, soars the most, so that's another way. Now these are dependent as well on weather conditions, so but for the most part, or generally, this is what we're talking about. Another also size, red-tailed hawks, the average red-tailed hawk, the wingspan's about 52 inches, 56 inches, somewhere around there, so it's a good wingspan. Another one of the Buteos family that you may see around here, and they're around, they're just not as common. In fact, they're somewhat uncommon just in this region, and that is a broadwing hawk. A broadwing hawk, again, is from of the Buteos family. It is a lot smaller than a red-tailed hawk. Its size in comparison to something else, I'd say it's about the size of a crow. And it flies, when you see it flying in the air, it flies primarily the same way that a red-tailed, or its silhouette looks basically like a red-tailed hawk does. It has the wide tail for the most part, okay, and it has the broader looking wings, but it's much smaller. And the other characteristic is, and again generally speaking, is a broadwing hawk will soar, then flap about 2 or 3 wing beats, and then soar a little bit, and then flap 2 or 3 wing beats, and then soar. And remember, the red tail just soars, and every once in a while will flap. The other hawk that you may see around here, again, Buteos family, is a red-shouldered hawk. They are more common than the broadwing hawk, and they're yet less common than the red-tailed hawk. And these, when you see them flying, you'll notice when their wings are out that they have the red shoulder patches, and you'll notice those with the sun coming through. Getting on the smaller hawks, now you'll see, again around here, you'll see kestrels. Kestrels are they're the prettiest little birds. They're small, they're only probably about this big. When you see those flying, and you'll see them they'll perch generally up on telephone wires or whatever, you'll see them flying around. A couple characteristics of kestrels is when they're flying, first of all, their wings are not broad and rounded at the end. Their wings come out like this and sort of come back. They're like this, and they come to a point. And when they fly, they're very erratic. The rapid wing beats, and they'll fly, and they'll turn like this, and they're jerky. But if you ever get the chance, and it happens, and in fact, just probably about a week ago, on Route 28, I saw a kestrel as I was driving along come down, fly across the front of the car, and grab a mouse on the side of the hill. And if you get the chance, watch these things. I mean, don't wreck the car, of course, but watch them, because what is real neat is when they come down onto their prey and their wings come out to bring them back, when their wings open up, they have the prettiest colors in there. Of all the hawks, I think they're one of the prettiest colored hawks, with the exception of a goshawk maybe. But they are just terrific to watch. Again, they're smaller, but these are great birds to watch. And they're pretty common around here. I see them quite often. Again, not nearly as often as I would see a red tail, but I do see them quite a bit. So these are some of the hawks that you can watch for around here and really get an idea as to what they do and how they do things. And if you listen to, that's another neat thing, especially with red-tailed hawks, is when they're flying along, and a lot of times you'll hear hunger cries, and it's just that they're hungry, that's all. I mean, they're not suffering or anything. But what is neat is when they scream out, it is such a neat sound. In fact, it sort of bothers me, I guess, but I have no reason to bother me, I guess. It's just that I know the difference, and maybe that's why. But every movie I have seen, and I think in my lifetime, that ever had an eagle in it, they're usually bald eagles, but nevertheless, when they have an eagle in it, no matter what it is, no matter what kind of an eagle, every time it makes a sound, the sound it makes is from a red-tailed hawk. So they show footage of an eagle flying, and then they record a red-tailed hawk for some reason, and then they put the two together, and that's what you get. And I don't know why it doesn't make any sense, but I mean, for years, before I really get into birds, I always thought that a bald eagle sounded like a red-tailed hawk does. And I was surprised the first time I heard a bald eagle. I was really surprised the first time I ever heard a golden eagle, because there was no resemblance. So that's something else to look for. But again, if you get a chance to hear them and you watch them soaring outside, take the time to stop. In fact, the other day, it was about 3 to 4 days ago, I was taking a walk up to the post office. It wasn't too bad of a day, and decided to walk out, and I saw a red-tailed hawk flying, and then all of a sudden I saw another red-tailed hawk flying. Then I saw a third red-tailed hawk flying. So of course I had to stand there and watch, and they would fly down a little bit, and I'd walk down the street a little bit, and then I'd run down the street a little bit and see them, and then they'd fly back, and I'd walk back down. It took me an hour to go about a half a mile, but it was terrific. The only thing that I really did notice at the end of all this is, and you have to understand that when I see something, then I hear it screaming or something like that, and I'd see it diving after food or whatever, and I sort of jump up and down inside a little bit, and I guess it shows. And by the end of this, I noticed that people were actually, when they were walking down the sidewalk, they would get close to me, and they would cross the street and walk around me and come back the other side. So you have to kind of watch out for that too. People think you're a little nuts, but really it's worth it. It's just so neat to see these things out there, and not just watching them fly around, because they'll fly for a while, but then they'll do something, and something will happen, and you'll really get to see a lot of neat things. Anyway, some of the other things I want to talk about, when I start talking about hawks, and especially red-tailed hawks, I go crazy. I'll talk forever on those. Some of the other hawks that are around, so to speak, but not around here, that you won't see around here, you'll see some sharp-shinned hawks. Okay, they're a lot smaller too. You'll see those around every once in a while, but they're not too common. The goshawk, and that is, golly, the goshawk is such a pretty hawk. And I mentioned that before. That is of the accipiter family. And a goshawk, we're finding them basically in New York State, up in the Adirondacks and whatnot. I don't think we haven't really found too many in Pennsylvania, and any that have been located in Pennsylvania, as far as nesting, they'll migrate through, but as far as nesting, have been up in northern Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to say where, because I don't want people looking for them, because they're still very, very uncommon. But at any rate, these are a great hawk, and when they fly, again, the characteristics are a lot different. I'm not going to go into those on this week's show, because it's just you won't need to know those right now, because you won't be out watching those. But these are neat hawks to watch too, if you ever do get the chance. And in fact, I think in one of the upcoming shows, we're going to have a live goshawk on for us. I was going to say here in the studio, but as I thought about it, I think what we're going to try to do is do it out on location. At any rate, some of the other hawks you may see around here of the accipiter family is a Cooper's hawk. Again, a Cooper's hawk is, probably about so big, and is, again, a great hunter. Not real common around here. There's quite a few, but geez, not that many. I mean, again, they're making a comeback, and they're slowly but surely, getting more in numbers. But we really have to watch those as well. Cooper's hawks are real neat hawks too. What they'll do is they'll fly through the woods and hunt that way, whereas red tails will generally sit out and hunt in open fields. Owls. Again, I could go into all the other hawks, and talk about them, and we'd end up spending a 3-hour segment here. But owls, the most common, I guess, around here would be a great horned owl. And again, they are protected because they were considered endangered. They have come back in their ranks. They are more abundant probably than red-tailed hawks. In fact, I'm sure they are. They are everywhere. But again, we can't go out and shoot them. Okay. these owls play a very significant role, great horns as well as all the other ones, because they eat rodents. Okay, farmers for years would shoot great horned owls. Why? I don't know. I guess they killed their chickens or something. Possibly. Well, they would. I mean, if they're out running around. But what the farmers found out is after they wiped out all these great horned owls that were around the farms, they didn't have any problem with their chickens being killed by them anymore. Terrific. But what they did have a problem with is they were overrun with rats and mice. And the reason is that's what the great horned owls ate for the most part. And when they were gone, then the rats and the mice came back. So now farmers, knowing this, have come back, and they're just more than welcome. Not all farmers, of course, but for the most part, they're just more than willing to have great horns nest or take up residence near their property. And I found many hunters now that when I find a nest on their property, they want nothing more than to have that nest protected. They don't want anything to bother because they want them to stay there. So you'll get a chance to see those around. They're very common. In fact, going down I-79 south from Pittsburgh, last year there was a great horned owl nest not far off the road. You could sort of pull your car over to the side of the road and just sit there and look from the car, and you could see the baby sitting in there. So if they're back in there this year, I'll let you all know, and you can go and take a look. But pull over on the side of the road first. Don't be like me, drive down and try to look at everything. In fact, for any of you that haven't yet gotten behind me in a car, when you do, if the day ever comes, I'm sure you'll know who I am, because you look for the guy in the burgundy car that's going down the road like this. I always stay within my lanes except for in hawk season when they're migrating out. When there's hawks in the sky, I know it's a terrible thing, but you'll find me swerving a little bit. So what I have to do is if there's cars around me, I can't look, or else I have to pull over and wait. But just take time, look along the sides of the road. In fact, switch drivers. If you're going to go on a long trip, make sure you switch drivers so somebody can look for a while and somebody else can look for a while, because it's a real neat thing. Okay, the other thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is just eagles. Again, birds of prey. We can talk about ospreys too. I didn't mention ospreys, but the thing with ospreys, again, is you won't see them around here really, except for when they're migrating through. But again, we're going to have other shows in the future, and we're going to talk about these things in more detail. In fact, we'll probably break them into smaller segments. Okay, eagles. We'll start with the bald eagle. The bald eagle, again, was just almost wiped out. I mean, it was really, really in bad shape. Now they have come back. They're still not great, believe me, but they are coming back. And the greatest place around here to see bald eagles, and everybody says, yeah, you can't see bald eagles around here. You can, is go up around Pymatuning State Park. And go to the part of Pymatuning State Park that's near Linesville, PA. And there's the Waterfowl Museum there that's run by the Game Commission. Anyhow, the reason I say that is because you can go up there, and that's where you'll see them quite a bit. In that general area, within probably about 20 miles around, in a 20-mile radius of that area, there are, I don't want to get into any numbers, I'd say that you'll probably find, with mature and immature bald eagles together, probably about 20. And that is really something, 15 or 20. And that is really a comeback, considering that for years there were 2, and that was it. So, if you want a chance to see a bald eagle, go up that way and take a look year-round. The only time they may leave, and usually they're around year-round, but when the lake freezes over and there's no more food, then they'll migrate out. And that's primarily why any bird migrates out, is because of a lack of food, and then they'll go somewhere else. So anyhow, please take the time and go up there as soon as you get a chance and try to look for the eagles. In fact, if you go to the Waterfowl Museum, if the museum itself is open, it's not a big museum, it's just a little building. But anyhow, as I said, it's run by the Game Commission, and the game wardens that work in there are more than happy. Generally, when you go up, they'll have a spotting scope set up outside. If they don't, and there's an eagle in the area, just go in and ask them, and they'll be more than happy to bring it out. They'll set up the spotting scope for you, focus it on an eagle sitting on a perch, and you can sit there and just look through the scope, and you'll see the eagle plain as day. And if you're lucky enough, and it happens quite a bit, is the eagles will fly right over the museum, and you won't even need binoculars or anything. You can just stand there and watch them, and it's really, really terrific to see those things flying in the wild. So please take the opportunity and go up there and see them one of these days. If you need directions, by the way, or you're not sure where it is, give us a call down here at the station or drop us a letter, and there's no problem. I'll be more than happy to give you the address, and I'll be more than happy to give you directions up there. In fact, if I go up sometime, you want to follow me up, that's okay. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about on today's show, since we are running out of time here, is golden eagles. Hey, they are somewhat larger than bald eagles, not much, okay, but they're, well, roughly. At any rate, you won't really see those around here. If you see a golden eagle around here, you are in great shape, okay? I mean, I have never, except for migration down the ridge, I've seen them, but never just flying around. And the reason for this is they used to nest quite a bit in the New York area, up in the Adirondacks. And unfortunately, when DDT was big and things like this, what happened is the American bittern was destroyed, okay, or wiped out up in that area. And a lot of the areas, besides DDT, there was areas of burns and marshland that was wiped out as well. And this is where the American bittern had its habitat. And when all this was wiped out and the bittern was wiped out there and moved elsewhere, that was the primary food supply for the golden eagle. So as a result, the golden eagle left as well. There's still golden eagles around, but not around here, and that's why. And this is another thing I want to stress. You know, everybody's always talking about water pollution, air pollution, things like this, you know, and I know we all get tired of hearing it, you know, but really it's a very important thing, because when these things affect our water supply or our air supply or anything else, it affects everything that uses that, including us. And you got to keep that in mind, okay? So don't just discard it and say, oh, well, you know, it'll get taken care of. I'm just really getting tired of hearing it. There's too many problems going on. Granted, there are, but remember, this one does affect all of us, okay? So that's going to be about it for this week's show. We do have a few slides to show you at the end here of different red-tailed hawks and golden eagles and things like this, just a few of them. So, you know, you might want to stay tuned and just watch those for us for a while. And that'll wrap it up for this week. So I hope everything was enjoyable for you, and I hope you'll enjoy us next week. Thank you.